welcome to Illini Drive, 107.1 WPGU. I'm your host, Brendyn Jones, joined with Nithin and Reddy, as always, dynamic duo. Yep. Hitting it on this.
We got to come up with like our duo name.
We'll figure it out.
Splash Bros. You got. We need something.
Got the Splash Bros. Do you remember when was it Andrew Wiggins and Zach LaVine when they were on the same team and they called and they were like obviously both really athletic and one of them was like, yeah, we're the Bounce Bros.
Oh, I like that name. That actually is kind of fitting.
Yeah, it was cool for a second. It didn't really go off because like obviously Zach LaVine wasn't.
Are we the Terrible Take Bros?
Yeah, we could be the Terrible Take Bros. We'll figure out a name that rings a little better. But we'll figure that out and we'll get to you guys on Wednesday. But on this, it's a nice Monday. I went over to Japan House, chilled out for a second. It's nice. It's a nice day.
Are they still having events there? Because I know with COVID, like
no, we just kind of just sat in the grass, did some homework, called some friends.
Okay, nice.
It was just nice. You know, I think tomorrow is supposed to be like officially the last nice day of the year.
Yeah.
Since it is pretty much the middle of November now, and then we're in the Midwest, so snow will probably come in the next 2-3 weeks.
It's shocking that it's been this nice the last like week.
Yeah, for real. I don't really. Yeah, I'm happy about it. I don't know why it's like that. But it's exciting. It's exciting that at least we got this little week. And then it's not even supposed to be bad the rest of the week. It's supposed to be in the 50s.
Yeah.
So not terrible. Definitely not like go outside and hang out weather.
It's going to rain tomorrow night.
I hate rain.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing.
Tomorrow night just or like for the rest of the week?
I looked just at tomorrow because I saw it's getting colder.
Yeah.
I wanted to see if I could go out and like play basketball or play football or something. But I think it's not going to be great after that.
Hate that. But yeah, enjoy the good weather while you last. It's still pretty nice out there. Go on a late night walk with some friends or something. I don't know.
That was a little sketchy. A late night walk.
You don't like to go on late night walks?
Well, it's so dark now. I like it when it's like the sun's setting.
No, I like going on. Well, like me, like I like going on walks at night, just like walking around listening to music. But I don't recommend going by yourself. Definitely go with friends.
Yeah,
you're gonna do that. I'm a little reckless, I guess. But yeah, enjoy something because you have to enjoy something after the weekend that the Illini gave us.
Oof.
And as much as I want to skip over it, gloss over it, as much as I want to forget about what we saw on Saturday afternoon, we are an Illini sports radio show, so that's what we're going to have to talk about. They were bad.
Where do you want to start? Because there's a lot to talk about.
Well, it's I don't know where to start. And, this is what plagues us every week now. You just don't know what to pick apart. Week 2, their offense was at least driving down the field and scoring a little bit. That disappeared. They had two good drives, really, and both of them ended in touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Other than that, it was pretty abysmal.
I really only count one of them, though, because, actually, you could say 3. It was just one was depleted by 2 crazy plays where you get a penalty.
Yeah. And
then you get a 20
They were knocking on the – was that the one – that's the one that – when Mike Epstein had the 63-yard run.
No, that was they scored on that drive. It was
right after halftime.
Right out of the half, and then Karan Taylor has that weird fumble that.
Yeah, very weird. That went 30 yards backwards.
Yeah, and
after a penalty.
Suddenly, you went from being at the Minnesota 10 to the Minnesota 48.
Yeah, third and goal on the 48, then 4th and goal on the 48. You can't really. There's no play in the playbook for that.
Yeah, but that wasn't the lone problem, just having players like that. It was the fact that Illinois couldn't even get into a position where they were fighting like they were last week, because last week the problem was turnovers. You get good drives going, and then Karan Taylor would throw a pick or there'd be a fumble. There would be some sort of turnover. But you at least saw that the ball was moving and that Karan Taylor, Mike Epstein, Chase Brown were able to run the ball and get some good yardage. This week, there was absolutely nothing. Karan Taylor, I think he had like 40 yards passing at halftime.
Yeah, it was bad.
Finished the game with 106.
106, and one of those was a 52-yarder to Joshi Matter-Bebe.
Yeah, when it was just a bunch of missed tackles.
Basically. Yeah, basically. So, I don't know. It's a... Let's start on the offense, right? The lone bright spot on the offense was Mike Epstein rushing for 103 or 106 yards. Can't remember.
108.
108 yards off the top of 108 yards.
Although it's a little skewed because he had that 63-yard.
He did have the 63-yard run, so it's not like it's a...
It's 10 carries for 45 yards if you take that out.
So that's not a great game. Obviously, broke that big run, which obviously they scored on that play or that drive. So it's a great thing. Mike Epstein, who's battled a lot of injuries in the last 2 years, finally coming back and having that impact. We love to see it. He's been one of the consistent parts of this offense. Mm-hmm. At least, you're going to get at least, 70 yards out of him each game-ish, something around that. Chase Brown has also been pretty good. There's only a redshirt sophomore, I believe. And he rushed a little bit. I think he has a lot of talent. I think also the offensive line just was really poor. Yeah. So it's hard, obviously, to get your rushing attack going. Quarterback play. Where do you start? Didn't have a lot of time. Karan Taylor didn't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
And as a fourth-string quarterback, when you don't have a lot of time, it's hard to make plays, right? But also, he wasn't that accurate when he did, have the ability, to make those passes. It's just so hard to grade this offense because I wrote about this in my story.
Give them an F+, or is it a D-?
I gave the offense a D-, and I think I gave the defense a F+.
Okay.
But I wrote about this in one of the notes, is that this offense just has no identity. They don't. You don't know where you're going to get your production from. You'd think it'd be from the receiving core that's supposed to be really good. I still think is really good. And Josh Imatorbhebhe, Brian Hightower, Luke Ford got some passes. Had a pretty good run after catch that was called back because Karan Taylor was in front of the line of scrimmage. But that's like what you would want from Luke Ford. Daniel Imatorbhebhe, you have Daniel Barker, Donnie Navarro, who had a catch and run, I think. Oh no, it was Donnie Navarro who caught that ball after after Karan Taylor had passed the line of scrimmage. Pretty good receiving core that you think is going to be your production, hasn't really done anything. Granted, their starting quarterback is out for at least one more game, but even in the first game when he played, they didn't do anything. And then you have this offensive line that everybody thought was so experienced and going to be so good. Obviously, COVID hit the offensive line pretty hard in terms of people having to quarantine and follow those protocols. So that's you kind of got to kiss that goodbye. And then, rushing is really your only thing. But, of course, it's so hard to rush without a good offensive line. So you just – and it sucks for the Illini, but 4 games in, they don't have an offensive identity. And they're going to have to do it again because if you think – it sounded like what Lovie was talking about today in the press conference was that there's still no new positive tests and that they're going to start getting these players back who were in the quarantine process for 2 weeks. So players like Isaiah Williams, right, who is the second string for a reason.
I thought it was 3 weeks, though. You got to be...
Well, if you test positive, but Isaiah Williams never tested positive.
Oh, okay. I see.
He was just in close contact, so that's a 2-week, 14 days out. Isaiah Williams, who, as far as we know, hasn't tested positive, he's going to have to... You assume there's going to be some type of quarterback battle, right? Now that Karan Taylor, who had a pretty good debut, didn't follow that up with a pretty good...
it was very bad.
Very bad. We're going to be honest, very bad. You're going to, especially if Matt Robinson, who tweaked his ankle, may be back, there might be a 3-way quarterback battle coming into next week. You still aren't going to have an identity because if you have a new quarterback out there, that changes the whole system. That changes anything anybody's able to do. That terrifies me because 4 games in, if you don't have any offensive identity, you're going to get linemen. You're going to get linemen back. That's great. You still are going to have, this wide receiving core. But if you have a new quarterback, it shifts everything anybody wants to do. Isaiah Williams, we haven't seen him in these past 2 years really do anything great when it comes to throwing the ball. Obviously, we know what type of athlete he is, but we still haven't seen him throw the ball really well. And if you want to score, that's what you're going to have to do. So week 4 could bring, as I said before, a whole new identity, and that is terrifying because halfway through the season at this point, what is the Illini offense?
That's
you
a
don't
good
have to answer that question because I don't think anybody knows.
I mean, the thing with Isaiah Williams bringing him is that maybe you can sort of have an identity because you have to be run first if he's playing. And maybe you sort of go through the Denard Robinson approach that Michigan went or modern day read option approach where you're just heavily running the football and you're allowing your quarterback to make plays. Because Karan Taylor's athletic. He's more athletic than Brandon Peters. But the problem is that he doesn't do enough in the running game and he doesn't do enough in the passing game. So he's in this sort of limbo period where we don't exactly know how to use him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there's those identity questions with this team. I think if Isaiah Williams becomes the quarterback, I don't know how good his passing is going to be because, frankly, what we've seen hasn't been good through the air. But I'm hoping that maybe we can use some different formations. We can go to some pistol formations, some more shotgun run heavy approaches, because right now what we're seeing isn't working. I mean, it worked to an extent against Purdue, but Purdue's defense is not a great defense. Their offense carries that team, and it has this entire season. So I'm hoping that maybe the Illini need to change things up, because what we've seen so far hasn't worked at all through 3 games. I mean, being only in one score game and the rest being blowouts where you're losing by nearly 30 points in both games, that's tough to watch. I mean, I think what stands out the most for me, though, is that Minnesota got 20 more plays off than Illinois, and that's with them taking the gas off in the last, I'd say, like 18-ish minutes when they knew the game was over after they went up 35-7. So you have that, and you're still losing 20 plays, and you're only able to throw the ball 17 times, considering you were down 3 scores for the last, I want to say, like 40 minutes of the game. Like, it was a large period of time.
Yeah, it was bad. That's really how the game went, right? They came out, and Tanner Morgan was kind of slinging it. He was throwing it. I wrote about this a little bit. The Illini looked like they didn't want to get beat deep, right? They got beat deep a few times against Wisconsin. They got beat a few times against Purdue. Seemed like they didn't want to get beat. They didn't want to let anybody, behind them. Tanner Morgan really picked up on this and was picking them apart with these comeback routes on the outside of the sideline. That's fair that you don't want to get beat deep, but you have to have some sort of presence in the middle of the field.
To be fair, though, they were getting stops early.
They were.
The first 2 possessions, they played pretty well.
They did get 2 stops in a row, right? They got the punt, and then they forced a fumble. Jake Hansen, obviously, just doing Jake Hansen things, right? Keeping this team together any way he knows how is you just play really aggressive turnover football. But it's at the same time, right? A lot of those incompletions that Tanner Morgan had throughout the first 2 drives were on Tanner Morgan. They weren't on the Illini defense, right? I was really concerned about the incompletion percentage that this Illini defense was going to be able to have. And to be fair, I don't know Tanner Morgan's stat line off the top of my head, but he had at least 8 incompletions, right?
He had 10 incompletions.
Yeah, 10 incompletions, right? 5 of those are on Tanner Morgan. 5, like, those aren't always on the Illinois defense. It's tough when you see that they can't force incompletions. And then at the end of the day, when they're trying not to get beat deep, there's not a lot of safety help for the run. And that's when you see Muhammad Ibrahim go off for 240 some yards rushing.
224. He was phenomenal, especially in that
He was really good.
After that fumble, Ibrahim just he went to a different level because he knew he could carve up this team. And to be fair, he's probably the best back in the Big Ten.
He leads the Big Ten in rushing yards after that game.
Yeah, and he's coming off of another 200-yard game, so he's been phenomenal this year. But we were hoping that the front 7 would be able to stop this run offense, and it would be basically Tanner Morgan trying to win the game. And that's exactly the opposite of what happened. I mean, Tanner Morgan, he played a solid game, but he only had 200 yards passing, 216 yards passing. Ibrahim just kept getting the ball over and over and over. And I mean, it felt very, I'm going to compare it to like that bowling ball running back you see in the NFL often.
Right.
That just keeps bouncing off guys and keeps churning for yards. I mean, his goal line runs were so impressive because there were Illini there, and then he just kept running and churning for those extra yards the O-line was pushing. I was really impressed and shocked that the Minnesota run offense just completely demolished the Illini inside. The
thing that really, really sucks about the situation that happened on Saturday, just not being able to stop the run, is that a good back is going to, get to the second level. They're going to get to the second level consistently. What a good defense has to do is make those second level tackles, right? We see that all the time. In every level, right? If you can make second level tackles, you can make a great back pretty limited, right? Because
part of being a good defense is not allowing those opportunities.
Well, but it's tough when you're also facing a good offensive line and a good back, right?
That is true.
You're not always, especially, you're not always going to get the first contact off the D line.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that hurt Illinois so much is that they were not able to tackle at the second level. They missed so many tackles in this game, and Lovie talked about it in the press conference. It's just people asked about it, right? It's like, what are you supposed to do fundamentally now in week 3 if these guys who you have a pretty experienced team, a lot of these guys are second, third year starters, they can't make tackles, right? Mm-hmm. You can't tackle. And granted, Nate Hobbs and Marquise Beeson were out, right? Those are two best secondary players. They're out. But at the same time, it's like everybody's a D1 Power 5 athlete, right? You expect to go out there and if you're not going to make stunning plays, at the very least, get there, wrap up, and tackle people. And I know it's easier said than done, right? If I was out there, I'm getting run over as well. But it's just kind of frustrating to see that, right? You don't have this kind of gang tackle mentality. You don't have this, it's me or you. I'm going to wrap you up and bring you to the ground. That's not what it was Saturday, and it was really bad. And Lovie talked about how they just got, outmuscled. I'm thinking their physicality wasn't there.
Okay.
Right? The Minnesota team was way more physical on the front line as a running back. Wide receivers were more physical. And it showed. It showed that's what happens. I mean, the Minnesota offense accounted for more than 500 yards, right? They just got out-muscled. Not all of that is, that's because they missed tackles. That's because they just weren't at the ball. And that's frustrating to see, right, 3 weeks in, because not only does this offense not have a real identity, this defense is struggling just as much.
Yeah.
I don't know what comes from it. I'm going to be blatantly honest. It looks like a 0-win season.
Yeah, I have a tough time saying 0-win season just because I feel like you get opportunities as a team to get a win, even if you're a bad team. That's just very hard. I mean, granted, we've seen Illinois seasons where they go winless in the Big Ten, so it's not out of the question. But I feel like this team, we've talked about identity, but this team doesn't know what to do and how to get in winning positions because they haven't led the entire season. And
they never had a lead.
Because they were down.
They're down in Wisconsin.
They were down to Purdue, and they never came back. They're down to Minnesota.
Yeah.
They've never had a lead this season, and that's concerning because this team is not built to come back from big deficits. It's not like last year when it felt like we could get turnovers at a higher rate, and the offense was clicking, and you get that Michigan State comeback. This year, nothing's really clicking. I mean, the best part of the team early was the run defense. And now there's even more concerns about what we're going to do when we play in Ohio State or when we play in Iowa with good run offenses. So I don't feel optimistic at all. It's a similar feeling to what I have with the Bears, where it just doesn't seem like anything's going right. And at some point, it's either going to implode or it's going to click.
Yeah. Well, that'll lead us to our first break. When we come back, we'll still tackle a little bit of Illinois football, try to figure that out. Talk about the college football landscape, things that happened over the weekend. So stick with us on Untitled Chapter 107.1 WPGU. Welcome back to Illini Drive 107.1 WPGU. Me and Nithin were just doing some fact checking. Back to the Illinois football team. This is the point of the Monday show where we say, where do they go from here?
This is not a fun point.
It's tough. I don't know. Because their schedule, we talk about it every week, doesn't get easier, right?
Yeah.
So when I hope the listeners, I always want to say viewers, they're not viewers. The listeners can hear the disappointment.
No cameras here.
No cameras here. Jason cannot be here because of the studio regulations on COVID. Mm-hmm. Shout out Jason, though. He always listens. Yeah. But the disappointment in my voice, I'm sorry. I know I'm supposed to be an objective journalist, whatever. It hurts. It hurts to see this team. But this coming week they play Rutgers in Rutgers, right? And Rutgers, who is 1-2, with that win against Michigan State, they lost against Indiana, put up 27 against Ohio State, though, third-ranked team in the nation this week. I can't feel good about this game.
Well, do you feel good about any game, to be honest?
No, me and Nithin were talking about this over, the break. This could easily be a winless team.
Yeah.
Right? This season that we see with no fluff games at the beginning to kind of figure out where you're at as a team, with a Big Ten that everyone with the exception of Ohio State, is looking competitive. Obviously, we don't know where Wisconsin's at because they've missed the last 2 games, but everybody with the exception of Ohio State is looking pretty competitive, at least with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And for as good as Ohio State is, and as above the tier that Ohio State is, it looks like on the very opposite end is Illinois, a tier and a half or 2 tiers below everybody.
Yeah.
So it's like, where do you go from here, right? You looked before the season, you're like, oh, Northwestern, let's get that revenge game, right? They're 3-0.
They might win the Big Ten West.
They might win the Big Ten West, depending on what happens with Wisconsin. You look at Rutgers, who wasn't that good. They're 1-2. They at least have a win, right? Nebraska,
Nebraska's the saving grace because they don't have a win yet. They haven't looked very. I mean, granted, they played Ohio State and Northwestern.
They played Ohio State, Northwestern. They probably would be 0-3 because they missed that game against Wisconsin. But I mean, what is Illinois? I don't know where Illinois looks good.
And if you're looking to the future on where they might play that last game of the season, it's between like Rutgers, Michigan State. I feel like Penn State's going to go past those teams in Michigan. But even those teams, like, it doesn't feel like a comfortable game no matter what if you're even last place in the Big Ten West. Because the Big Ten East is pretty good. I mean, like, Maryland's surprisingly good. Indiana's very surprisingly good. They might be a borderline top 10 team in the country. Obviously, Ohio State. And the teams at the bottom are teams that you expect to be good later in the season, the Michigans, the Penn States of the world. So, I mean, these next 2 weeks are probably very important for the Illini because I don't know where else you get a win on the season other than Rutgers, Nebraska.
If you don't go 2-0 in these next 2 weeks, don't expect to win.
Yeah.
If you go 2-0 and things on the offense turn around, obviously that Nebraska game, you're getting Brendyn Peters back, hopefully, as long as everything goes well with his health screens and everything. That's the reason he's out 21 days. Wait the quarantine period of COVID. You wait a couple weeks. You get the health screening, everything like that. As long as Brendyn Peters' health screens comes back well, you get him back for Nebraska. He's also not practiced for 3 weeks at that point.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know what you're getting. After that, you got Ohio State. They look great. That's a loss. Many people.
That's not even worth mentioning.
Yeah, many people consider them, second best team in the nation after Clemson lost.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that Clemson game.
They're in that argument.
Those hooligans, the Notre Dame fans.
Oh, God. We're going to really talk about that.
And then you see Iowa, which is obviously they've struggled a little bit this year, but it's Iowa.
Yeah,
You're never comfortable against Iowa.
Illinois hasn't ever been able to not ever. Illinois hasn't for a while been able to compete with Iowa.
And then it's Northwestern, who's currently ranked 23rd in the nation. So you just don't see a win. I don't see one. And I was talking to people in the press box this weekend. There's no way you see a win in this team, and it sucks because after the Purdue game, you're thinking, okay, maybe 2-7, right? If you lose that last game, but then after the showing they had in Minnesota, where you just don't have an identity on really either side of the football, I can't put I'm at a loss for words because I just can't put it in, and it's going to be a tough season for the Illini. It's going to be a season that
it's already a tough season.
Well, it is. I mean, at the end of the season, right? It's going to be a tough off season for the Illini. It's going to be a lot of questions are going to have to be asked, right? This is going to affect recruiting if they go winless, this is going to affect recruiting for the next 5 years. Easily.
Yeah, and it could also lead to transfers from a lot of great players.
100% it's going to lead to transfers, right? You think about the younger players that came in that are good. About like maybe Reggie Love, Marquez Beeson. right? These guys that were really, really highly recruited, have offers from a lot of places and came here because, hey, maybe this program's on the come up and I can be a part of that. No longer on the come up.
Yeah.
At all, right? You might see some transfers. You might see a new head coach next year, right? If they go winless.
If they go winless, you're going to see a new head coach.
There's no way you can defend.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if Lovey comes back.
Not only is there no way you can defend Lovey because there's no wins, but because this man whose pride rests on the defense. This defense is just bad.
It's also never been good under Lovey.
It's never been good. Last year was great at forcing turnovers, which we talk about all the time is very situational. It's great that they're able to capitalize on those situations. But there's never been a moment where this defense can be relied to stop the run.
Yeah.
Definitely never been a moment where they've been able to be relied on to stop the pass. And at this point, when you have all this talent on the field, you got to look at it's scheming. You got to look at preparation. You got to look at X's and O's, which all comes down to the coach and the coaching staff. So, man, it's going to be a tough offseason for the Illini, and a lot of questions are going to have to be asked. Probably not a lot of answers are going to be given, but yeah, it is what it is.
And in the press conference after Saturday's loss, I mean, Lovey just looked distraught and frustrated. Yeah. I mean, I remember a reporter asked a question about, are you basically just saying the same stuff over and over? What is the messaging? And he just got mad at the reporter straight up.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, I can't remember which reporter asked, but it's like every week you come in and you say, he's on to the next week. Like, we just have to get better. And at what point is it not on to the next week? And at what point is it there needs to be something changed? Mm-hmm. And he got mad about that question. He's like, what do you want me to say? I don't know. Yeah. If I was a fan, if I put my fan hat on, I'd be like, I want you to fix the team.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And I mean,
you want answers ultimately if you're a fan, because you're not getting any answers. Yeah. You're getting confusion throughout this era of Illini football, and you're getting hope that gets diminished the second you get it. And all of a sudden we're back to square one, if not behind the eight ball even further. And that's just so concerning, because this was supposed to be a good team. This was supposed to be a Brandon Peters-led offense that could potentially go 8-4 or compete in the Big Ten West, when really you thought Wisconsin was the only threat. Mm-hmm. And you thought, hey, we got a chance against Iowa this year. You got a chance to compete and beat Michigan State again. And you got a chance maybe of pulling an upset on a Michigan or a Penn State. But now it's all of a sudden, can you find a win in your schedule, which is completely demoralizing for the season that had so much hope.
Yeah. It's very tough. It's very tough. And it sucks because if you go winless this season, you're going to have to look at next year and be like, okay, now it's not even like we're turning the page, right? You're opening a brand new book. You have to write everything else. You're going to have to wait another 3 years for a coach to say that, hey, like, these aren't my recruits, these aren't my guys, wait till my guys get in, and then you're going to have to evaluate, right? You're going to have to – you're looking at maybe a whole new offense, whole new defense, another 2-3 years of struggling before you can even really evaluate results. And in a time that seems, so fluky and shifty, it's not what you want to see as an Illinois fan, because everybody in the Big Ten seems to be evening themselves out through all the confusion and the haze, and Illinois dropped the ball.
Yeah, and it's not always the best comparison, but Illini fans want a Brad Underwood-esque rise from Illinois football, where, okay, you struggle those first 2 years, but you're gaining some momentum. You're bringing in the right players. That third year you hit. Yeah. You're a tournament team. Or in this case, you'd be competing for the Big Ten title, or not even competing for the Big Ten title, competing for a chance to play in the Big Ten championship game. Instead, you have some positive energy, and then it's just all gone. And I don't know if this can be saved at this point, because we've seen this team completely fall apart, and it's sad because this was supposed to be a good team.
Yeah, I think that's all we can really say about Illinois football, because we don't want to – it's Monday. Nobody else wants this much sadness. Hopefully,
it's also a long last week. I mean, you had the whole election coverage.
Yeah. It's been a long week for Illinois fans, especially. But hey, the new page. Let's talk a little bit about other NCAA programs, right?
Yeah, because this is actually a really fun college football weekend.
Yeah, let me look at some of the games, actually.
I mean, the number one game that stands out it's Clemson game because you get – I think we should just start off with that because Trevor Lawrence doesn't play. And I'm watching the game, and I was so confused that Trevor Lawrence was on the sideline.
Isn't that weird?
It's the strangest thing. I said it to my roommates probably 100 times throughout the game. Like, why is he on the field? Because he supposedly has COVID or is getting negative tests, but you don't need him to travel with the team
at all
to Notre Dame. Just leave him at home. If you want to even use him as a pseudo offensive coordinator, just have him call in or something. But I mean, obviously you can't do that. But
right, I'm trying to see when he announced it.
It was 2 weeks ago, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
It was like right before
October 29th, right? And the game was November 7th. So October 29th, but that doesn't mean he tested positive on October 29th, right? Yeah. You have to assume that it was probably a few days before then. So let's just say maybe October 25th.
Yeah, 25th to 27th, somewhere in that range.
That's past the 10 days. But I could assume that they, hadn't worked out with him in however long. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. Like, it doesn't make sense to have him travel with the team. Seems like a very iffy move by Clemson football. But Clemson football, who, I mean, obviously behind Trevor Lawrence looks unstoppable and looked pretty good with his backup. I'm forgetting his name at the moment.
Wait, hold up. It's DJ something. Like, it was this last name that I couldn't.
Yeah, the last name is different. So, but they go, and obviously Notre Dame's a great team, but they go and lose in double overtime to Notre Dame, 40-47. And it really shakes it up. I mean, Clemson was the number one team in the country?
Yeah, they're still probably like number 4. So
they're number 4 this week. You have to assume if Trevor Lawrence is back on the field next week, they're still college football playoff bound, if not favorites for the national championship. They're just, I mean, the Clemson Tigers are just otherworldly, especially under.
I'd be kind of concerned though because Clemson didn't lose like 20-23 with having bad quarterback play. Their quarterback was phenomenal. 29 for 44, 439 yards, 2 TDs.
That's defense.
That's great. Yeah, this Clemson defense is supposed to be one of the best defenses in the country, and it did not look really good at all in the first half when Ian Book consistently drove on them, getting 23 points in that first half. They started to make some plays, forced a fumble at the goal line on Book, which looked like he had an easy walk-in touchdown. But then once again, Ian Book drives and gives them a chance at the game and ultimately the win because of that fourth quarter drive. I would be more concerned about this Clemson defense because Alabama looks phenomenal.
They also look really good.
Their offense is the best it's potentially ever looked, and that's with having 2 years of Tua starting for you. I'd be really worried. I mean, Ohio State, I don't think Clemson should be as worried as of now just because they haven't played anyone yet.
Right.
So once we get to the Big Ten championship game, we'll get more of a sense of them.
I'm looking at this it's wild that they've played 8 games, Clemson.
Yeah, I saw BYU was like 8-1 or 7-1.
Yeah. Well, because I was looking at stats for the story I was writing, and Muhammad Ibrahim, who rushed for 200 this week and rushed for 200 last week and had like 100 something week 1. I was like, oh, he's got to be one of the leading rushers, right? And then I see guys with almost 1,000 yards, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, you're not averaging 400 yards a game, and then you sit back and you remember it's like, oh, these guys have played 8 games already. It's wild. I think that what Notre Dame did though is really solidify the top 4. I don't see really, unless one of these guys lose the rest of the year. And I know Alabama has to play Florida. Florida's a good team.
Yeah, that's the
game that's gonna like solidify or not solidify everything. If Alabama wins, I think it solidifies everything. If Alabama loses, it shakes stuff up. But if all these 4 win out, I mean, we already know our Big Ten. I mean, not our Big Ten, our college football playoff. Am I wrong?
Yeah, so there is a chance for Texas A&M to get in there because they're right on the edge. There's teams like Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
I think 5th in the country or 6th in the country right now. So they have a chance if like Notre Dame loses.
Right.
And there's all of a sudden an argument. But this looks like the 4-team race. I mean, Florida could beat Alabama. That's the thing, though. They don't play in the regular season, which is a huge, huge edge for the SEC because if Florida wins out, and then they beat Alabama in that SEC title game, they're in for starters because they only have one loss, and it was to Texas A&M, so a good team. But Alabama's probably in too because they demolished Georgia, they demolished Texas A&M. You lose to a very good Florida team.
Yeah,
they're probably in. The Clemson Notre Dame game becomes huge.
Right,
that decides the fate, and then you have Ohio State, who looks like they're just going to cruise all the way to the CFP.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, granted, Wisconsin, we still don't know that situation. But, I mean, as we said before, the Big Ten looks pretty even across the board except for Illinois and Ohio State. But, yeah, the thing I definitely want to talk about is, I mean, the fans storming the field after the game.
Oh, yeah, that was something.
What were they, number 4 last week? They beat the number 1 team.
Yeah.
I don't think that's storm-worthy.
Oh, I disagree with that.
I don't think that's storm-worthy, man.
In any other year, I think it's storm-worthy just because it's Clemson, a team you haven't been able to beat, and a team that it really feels like there was a top 3, and then there was the rest of the field, and that was a huge win. You're beating the number 1 team.
Maybe I'm a hater, but I feel like I don't know. Maybe I'm spoiled because
I feel like any team that beats the number 1 team at home, you just storm the field.
Really?
Yeah.
Like even if it's the number 2 team?
Well, it depends what the gap is. Like Michigan, Ohio State, I'm pretty sure when that game happened, I think this was like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. That's a rival.
Ohio State storm. Yeah, that is true. But this is a huge monumental win for the program.
I don't know. I don't know. But under these circumstances that we are in right now, that definitely shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
At any point. And it begs the question is, we know how rowdy college fandom is. I mean, across all sports, especially football, especially at a school like Notre Dame, right? That has this history of being good. Last 10 years have been up and down for them, to say the least. But have this history of being good, have this pride in their football program. And, of course, they allow fans. There was no – they have a capacity. I'm not sure what the percentage capacity is for the Notre Dame Stadium. But there's no difference from what that field would have looked like if this game happened last year and what that field looked like on Saturday night.
Yeah.
In terms of numbers,
maybe a few more fans, but watching the game, there were so many fans in attendance. And what didn't make sense was that it was all in the lower level because that's where all the students were sitting for a student section. So you're getting a lot of fans there. Why don't they just spread them out among the top levels to socially distance?
Couldn't tell you, man.
It made no sense, and then they stormed the field, and
that's the thing is like, and this is why I'm very glad that Big Ten has their like policy of only family. Family is much less likely to storm the field.
Just looking at the Illinois game, it was very empty.
Right. Family one, it's only like, I think even with a family, it's only like 1,000 people in these stadiums that could theoretically hold 50 to 90,000, depending on which Big Ten school you go to.
Upwards of like 110.
Right, exactly.
Ohio State.
And then families, of course, much less likely to storm the field than the students and young adults are. It begs the question for all these other conferences.
Yeah.
One, it didn't look like Notre Dame did a lot to stop it as it was happening. I don't know how much you can do. I mean, you have these security guards there, and you have thousands of people rushing to one place. It's kind of impossible to stop. But it begs the question. It's like, this is why you can't have fans at college sporting events.
Totally.
Right? It's like, it's so unpredictable. And you get these games where people are going to want to have that experience. People are going to want to, everybody wants that experience to storm the field or to storm the court after a huge upset win. And it just seems just so irresponsible. And as we look at, teams that are playing against each other, right? Like, imagine if Cincinnati loses on the road, right? Yeah. Imagine if Alabama loses to Florida, right?
Well, that would be an SEC championship game. So.
Yeah, but
You don't really.
It's hard in the championship game, but it's like, it's just, I don't know. It's very weird to see the lack of cohesion throughout plans of different NCAA events, and obviously, like, we won't know the total impact of storming the field until probably like a week or two, until we start getting COVID numbers from Notre Dame. But like, players were on the field at that time.
Yeah.
Right. A bunch of people were on the field at that time. It can't be good. It's not good. And I'm very glad that Illinois will not be in that situation this season.
Ohio State. I'm just kidding.
Who's going to storm the court? Sure. Like, if 400 family members storm the field and spread
that's
out.
Not even
sure.
Storming. That's just like,
it's just like walking on and saying hi to your kid. At that point, then it's like, okay, whatever. Like, that's it, if that's the most damage. But I think that's probably the biggest crowd I've seen since March. You know, like, it was just awe. It was like awe. Like, it put me in awe to see that many people in one place.
It wasn't a good week for COVID because you get that, and then you get a lot of people just going out and celebrating in bunches about Joe Biden winning the presidency.
That was bad too.
Which, that's not great. I mean, the numbers are getting worse at this point, and
very much so.
This is, if you want to call it a second wave, you can, because it's getting pretty bad. I mean, especially in Midwest states, Illinois, Wisconsin, there's rises in cases. So I mean, we've gone over this so many times that we're just beating a dead horse at this point, but it doesn't make sense why there are fans at these games. Yeah.
That'll lead us to our second break. When we come back, we have to go back to sadness to talk about NFL football.
Only for a little bit.
Only for a little bit.
I'm not allowing more than a few minutes.
We'll talk about happy games, and then we'll also talk about the Bears when we come back on the Line on Drive 107.1 WPGU. Welcome back to Illini Drive on 107.1 WPGU. Bears suck. Nithin is only allowing, he said 1 minute of Bears talk.
I can't take more than a minute.
So we'll hit it quick. Offense, terrible. Oh, sorry. I accidentally.
This is like a once an episode thing.
Yeah. Sorry. I tried to click on a game and it brought up the highlights. But it was the Patriots-Jets game, so not a lot of highlights. That's tonight, isn't it?
That is tonight.
I won't watch that.
Great Monday night matchup. Team combined with the 2-13 record.
Yeah, that's tough. Bears obviously struggled. Offensive line had a few players out on the COVID reserve list. Had a few players have obviously been injured. Charles Leno was still there. He's trash. Sorry, I despise Charles Leno and Bobby Massey.
Okay.
They make my life frustrating.
Well, I despise this whole offense.
Yeah, okay. Let's hit it real quick. Offensive line, terrible. You can't run. David Montgomery's solid, but you can't run if you don't have a good offensive line. Receivers are okay. Allen Robinson's amazing. Nick Foles is a statue. You can't even rely on Mitch Trubisky to come back because he is on IR. Defense doing everything in their power to keep this game close. If David Montgomery hadn't fumbled,
it's a
tie game at the end of the game. But hey, a loss is one spot better in the draft. I don't know what to say. This defense deserves so much more than everything that the offense has given them. I'm a little frustrated with Nagy at the same time. It pissed me off when he did it was 4th and 1 on the first drive, and they ran up the middle knowing that they have 3 reserve players on the offensive line. Come up with something.
Whatever happened to the QB sneak? All reliable. I mean, I feel like it works.
Nick Foles is what? Nick Foles 6'6".
Yeah.
Jump over the line, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Get in there and jump over the line.
If Drew Brees can do it, you can do it.
For real. Drew Brees is 6'1", barely.
He's not even 6'1".
Exactly. So, like, and I'm not going to get into the Nagy show. I disagree with a lot of people. I think Nagy at the best is average, right? He's an average play caller. He's an average coach.
Yeah.
Pretty good at culture stuff. Everybody loves him. I like that. He won Coach of the Year on the back of Vic Fangio on that defense. That was just phenomenal in 2018. He needs to stop calling plays. He needs to stop calling plays. I also can't hurt him calling him that bad. He has a terrible offense to work with. I understand that. No offensive line. You can't do anything without an offensive line. Defense looks great. I think the entire offensive game checks should go to the defense with the exception of Allen Robinson. Yeah, that's really all I have to say about the Bears. 5-4. they're going to lose to the Minnesota Vikings because Dalvin Cook is cooking right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Keep losing, man. Keep that draft high. I don't want to see you.
Well,
in the
I wish
playoffs.
this happened earlier when we could have tanked for Trevor or tanked for Justin Fields, but now it's just
watching that Lions game and that Falcons game and the other games that we had comebacks again just doesn't hit the same now that you know how bad we actually are and we shouldn't have been in those games, and we won against teams that just aren't good in the fourth quarter. With the exception, I thought Matt Stafford was going to beat us. Should have beat us, but DeAndre Swift dropped the ball in the end zone. Now I'm pissed at DeAndre Swift. Come on, bro. He could have been 4-5 right now. So yeah, I know I feel bad complaining when other teams have less wins than us, but it is what it is. I'm over the Bears.
I mean, I'd much rather be the Chargers because they have Herbert, and it feels like there's some momentum with the team. They just keep losing.
Yeah, and they just keep losing. But you're comfortable with Herbert. You're comfortable with that offense, really, because their offense putting up points. Defense is iffy. They have Derwin James, who's obviously been injured these last 2 years, so you hope that he can come back next year and be great.
Defense looks pretty good. I mean, Joey Bosa, you got
that. Yeah, you have a foundation there. You just need. I feel like you need 1 or 2 more pieces. That's something that can be very supplemental in the draft.
Potentially a new coach, also. That might be what you.
What's his name? Anthony Lynn. You don't like Anthony Lynn?
Well, they just don't win with him. That's the thing.
That's true, but I think it's still pretty young. I think it's a new experiment. I would probably give them 1 more year just because they look like they have potential.
They're 2-6, and they probably should be like 5-3.
Yeah, there's games that they should have definitely been in or won. It's just it's good because they still have a pretty young core. Keenan Allen is not going to lose his prime for probably another 3-4 years.
Yeah, he's so good.
He's really good. Their defense is good with potential and good with established talent, and they're going to have a good draft spot. So I think it's Chargers fans should be really happy. I think that's
those 3 fans should be really happy.
That's the team that should be LA's team in the future because I don't think the Rams are sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Other NFL games that happened this week. I was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan yesterday.
I saw that
because of
you really could not be a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan anymore because that should have very well been a loss.
Yeah, that was a nail biting game. I switched allegiances. Not switched allegiances. I still rooted for the Bears in the early game, but because of events that happened in Pennsylvania this week, I decided to root for one of their teams, the only team that played this week from Pennsylvania.
Also, shout out Gabby.
Shout out Gabby. She gave me a sweatshirt. I got to wear it. Her family was in town, so we watched the game with them. Nice. They're diehard Steelers fans, man. They were yelling at TV the whole time, and I loved it. I loved it. Nice. It was an interesting game. They should have lost. I'm not a Steelers fan anymore. That was only a 24-hour thing. My honest opinion on them is that they're not good enough to win in the playoffs. I think a lot.
For me, they're contenders, but I still have the Chiefs won.
I think that they're not like. There's been a lot of these close games that could have went either way. I think one, they don't have the toughest schedule. They have played the Browns. They have played the Titans. They have played the Ravens. All 3-1. Of course, they're 8-0 right now. I think that they're a team that's really iffy that comes down to the fourth quarter a lot. You don't really know what you're going to get. Some of those games could have went the other way. It's not like we saw the Chiefs 2 years ago just dominating people. You know what I mean? And I think that's really what you need right now to be really successful in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Steelers have a Super Bowl this year. But they did almost lose to the hobbled Dallas Cowboys yesterday.
They probably should have.
Definitely should have. Play calling was suspect at the end.
Mm-hmm.
They were up 5 in their red zone, and they decided to pass the ball twice with like less than a minute left, and then
I didn't get it.
Ran on 4th down. Why don't you kick the field goal and be up 8? Even if they score, they have to get a 2-point conversion on this defense. Look, man, I don't know. Sometimes I wish I could be a play caller. I play a lot of Madden.
Although
I feel like my clock management would be better than
if you get that first down, the game's over. I guess that's the argument.
Yeah, if you get the first down, the game's over. But I mean,
it was a 4th and 1, right?
It was 4th and 1, but you also didn't wait to the end of the clock. You passed the ball a lot.
Yeah, no,
Chase Claypool ran out of bounds at one point. Rookie mistake. He's a rookie, but I don't know. I feel like you could have done a lot more than just some quick passes. I don't know. That's my take from the game. I feel bad for the Cowboys. They're hobbled with just a bunch of injuries.
Quickly, shout out Kyler Murray. That man is saving me in fantasy.
Yeah, that's who I played this week. This man had 40 with Kyler.
Although I'm beating you by 40 right now. So
there was no hope for me. There's no hope for me, but it would at least be okay if Kyler was human. This man's out here.
But I've been in another league where I thought I was going to put up like 90 points in a standard league. Put up 120 because Kyler goes off, and then we get some of those.
His rushing is just insane. What do you have, like 100 something?
100 yards. He might be the first ever 4,000, 1,000 player. He's on pace for it right now.
Yeah, I can believe it. And it's wild. He's doing things that we saw last year with Lamar Jackson, but at a different level.
Yeah.
It's weird. And it's because
he's doing it in a different way, too, because Lamar,
he's doing it in a different way.
There's a lot of design runs. There are some design runs. I mean, he got a huge 20-yard run on third down, I believe, to help them get points. But Kyler, like, he's Russell Wilson at escapability.
Except
pocket.
Faster and harder to tackle.
Yeah. So shifty.
The thing that really, really benefits Kyler Murray is that he has a pretty good receiving core.
Oh, yeah.
Like top 5 in the league.
Yeah, I mean Hopkins,
Fitzgerald, Isabella, and the thing that's different about Lamar Jackson is that he doesn't really have great receiving talent.
And we're kind of seeing it affect him right now.
Yeah, definitely seeing it affect him. He's obviously not what he was last year. Yeah, I don't know. What other games? Can you explain? Did you watch the end of the Chargers game?
Yeah.
I missed it. Can you explain what happened?
So basically, it's 4th and goal, 5 seconds left or something like that. The time really doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
There's basically one play left. And they throw this fade route, corner of the end zone. Guy catches it. Then on the way down, loses possession. And it's pretty clear after you see there's one replay that's very indicative of it. And the Chargers once again find a way to lose when it seems like every week they do this to themselves. They're not the Atlanta Falcons where they just blow leads, but they should be winning all of these games, and they find a way to blunder it.
Yeah. Maybe they're doing it on purpose.
I just have a tough time believing that.
Saints Buccaneers. We can talk about that real quick. Man, Tom Brady sucked last night.
Yeah, I mean it's this thing where he only is losing to the Saints. Like the Saints are just completely demolishing the Bucs, and the Bucs look otherworldly. Besides from that, like they beat the Packers 38-10, and you think they're the best team in football after that. And then they throw a dud where 38-3, even he shouldn't have had 3 points because you shouldn't really be kicking field goals when you're down 38 points.
100%. Bears and Saints only team to beat Tom Brady this year.
Yeah.
Forever go to Bears. Do you think Drew Brees retires after this year?
No.
You don't think so?
I think he's still got a year or two more. I have a feeling he might just wait till Brady retires so he can get that passing touchdown.
Man, I'm so sick of that, them passing off each other, except for, Drew Brees built himself a little lead last night. Yeah. It'll be hard for Tom Brady to come back unless Drew Brees.
No, he'll be fine. Because it just takes one or 2 games, because they're so close.
If Drew Brees has 2-3 touchdowns a game for the rest of the season, that's hard to come back.
Yeah, I guess, but also they use Kamara a lot, and he hasn't been having the same success as he has in the past.
That will end our show. We did talk about the Bears for less than a minute. Thanks for sparing me that, Nithin.
Yep.
Gabby and Josh will be here tomorrow. We'll be back Wednesday. Talk about stuff that happened. Maybe hit on some Illini basketball if we get news. Definitely missed that today. I don't know why.
Maybe we'll just do 45 minutes on The Bachelor.
Let's do it. Yeah. Let's do it. Why not? But for me and Nithin, this has been a Line Out Drive on 107.1 WPGU.